All right, SEC Media Days, first time on the show. Brooks Austin, what's up, man? You've got arguably the best YouTube setup I've seen of anybody at this event.
You know, it's funny you say that because building that studio, I might have taken a thing or two from the SEC podcast.
Is that right?
You know, I like how chaotic your home studio is. I like all those helmets. Mm-hmm. I have found that, especially the younger generation, they need chaos.
Yeah.
They don't need to be staring at my ugly face for 45 minutes. You know, they might want to look at the Georgia helmet, or they might want to look at the South Carolina helmet, or whatever else you got on the desk. So yeah, man, I do appreciate the love for the studio. It was a labor of love, man. That's a lot of work that went into that thing.
Well, I'll be honest with you, man. It is the most. I mean, it's borderline ESPN, and I'm trying to how many people do you have working with you right now?
It's just the three of us.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's me and my two producers. The Jonathan, the one that sits to the left of the desk, he handles all the audio and the interfaces and reads comments and does all that stuff. And Kirby handles all the camera switches and all the different pan, tilt, and zooms in there. Yeah, man, it's just a small little operation, but it's meant to look that way, right?
Yeah.
I found that when I was in a standard studio, originally I started out in my garage. I had two little walls pinned together with some screws and some nails, and two cameras that I would switch myself while I was doing the show. And I found that I would run myself into conversations about football that I needed to diagram, or I needed to show physically for the audience as an educator, right? But I couldn't do it because I was pigeonholed to this one shot. So I always said that the moment I was able to build my own studio, I would definitely make it freeform, where I could get up and take my ADD brain wherever it went, and we'd run and have some fun.
How cool is it, though, that Georgia's like opening up to you? And because a lot of these teams, Alabama, you know, they shut people off. You know, they're like, you're not traditional. You got to go through them. It's you know, I don't know. I just think that's pretty awesome. Georgia, they could do that, and no one would give them any shit.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the YouTube presence is kind of what I'm known for, but I mean, that's all through writing and Dogs Daily SI and doing all the stuff that I do through digital print. It's the reason that I get the credentials. You guys are the only ones big enough to be out here just because you're an SEC podcast. Like, y'all are
Is
here
that
on
a fat
Radio
joke?
Row. No, it's not a fat joke.
I was wondering why they put us out here. But
no, I'm dead ass, boys. Like, y'all are here at SEC Media Day as a non-traditional media member. So you're throwing these plights towards me. You're throwing these congratulations towards me, buddy. They're yours. You're here. You've made it here. I had to go through SI and through channels of traditional means, man. But no, I mean, it took 3.5 years at the University of Georgia before I was fully accepted. But I think that's the nature of the business here in the SEC. I think every network is a good old boy network. It is all about who you know. It's all about making sure that you make a good impression with whoever you're impressing at that moment.
Yeah.
Particularly with those SID departments, man, because their whole job is to protect the kind of narrative of their football program, or at least their athletics program, which we know the deal. It revolves around football.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, because Georgia, I mean, we just had Kirby Smart out here saying, you know, hey, we don't have a chip on our shoulder. We don't care what happened last year. We don't care that this is the toughest schedule we've ever had. You know, what do they? I mean, do they look back? I mean, as someone as dialed in as you, are they carrying any of that baggage into 24, or is it truly a clean slate?
Man, I felt like they cleaned it that day.
Yeah.
Like, Kirby opens his press conference after losing last year in the SEC championship game. The first thing he says is, nobody has gone from number 1 to number 5 after losing a conference championship game. In the 14 playoff format, it had never been done. And he opens it with that. And then like 30 seconds later, in the same statement before he ends his opening statement, he's like, but we didn't handle our business. We had the ability to control our destiny, and we did not do that today. That's on us.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. It's lip service, and I'm sure there are football players in that building that feel a little perturbed about the way last year ended. But I would imagine, based off everything that I've heard from players, that the coach speak trickles down. Those guys have absorbed that. That's why all the other off-the-field stuff's so damn confusing to me, because these guys take to their coaching like sponges, man, in every aspect. And then the other stuff is just like, we don't listen to that. It's weird. It's so weird.
That being said, can we get you on record? Georgia would have whooped Michigan in the playoff, don't you think?
Oh, buddy, I went viral in the wrong.
For
in the
T-Bob,
worst
right?
In the worst of ways for saying Michigan didn't have a snowball's chance in hell to beat Alabama. So, yeah, I probably would have been rolling some train on that one. I mean, damn. I thought Michigan's quarterback play was so daggum limited last year offensively, not necessarily just because of JJ, but because of all the other stuff they had going on. And I always thought that, like, you ain't gonna bully an SEC football team. Like, you gonna line up and run it 40 times today and think you gonna win? Like, no, that's not how this works. You gotta have great quarterback play to beat Alabama, to beat Georgia. Not that day. I mean, they had great offensive coordinating designing in that Rose Bowl. I mean, they dialed it up for a whole first quarter and a half. Alabama's defense seemed perplexed, and then, towards the end of the game, they really leaned on them because Alabama had been playing this all day. Like, what am I doing? Oh, shit, now I'm getting hit in the face. And, like, that's why they rolled them over. But I failed to recognize that just off the tape. The tape told me that you ain't going to line up and punch an SEC team in the face. But they did.
Shit. Well, you got to get off the gate August 31st. You got Clemson coming in. Again, Kirby said the right things. But, is this going to be, like, the statement game? Are you expecting just an ass beating? Because I am. I think it's happening.
That offensive line from Clemson is so porous, so porous, and I don't foresee Cade Klubnik being like able to operate within that offense. However, against Georgia, if they can make that thing a rock fight, because I think defensively they have a front six that's on caliber with just about anybody in college football. I think they got some really solid defensive backs as well, and obviously they're good schematically defensively. If they can make it another 2021 game, they might have a shot. But if you're telling me Georgia's going to score 30 points in that game, I'm going to tell you they're going to win by 20, in that play. It's probably going to be a 30-10 ball game in that sense, because I don't foresee Clemson scoring multitudes of touchdowns in that football game. The offensive line is just too bad.
Can you take us back to the Caleb Downs thing?
Oh, which one, high school or college?
College, because I still, that's baffling, and I'm sure we all know money probably had something to do with it, but getting teamed up with Malachi Starks, I mean, my God.
I think from everything that I've heard, the parting of ways with T-Rob in Alabama and T-Rob going to Georgia, I think because I want to say that might have happened before Saban retired. I can't quite remember the timeline. Nonetheless, there was kind of a ruffling of the feathers when T-Rob went from Alabama to Georgia with the Downs camp, but then all of a sudden T-Rob's at Georgia, and we still love T-Rob, even though we didn't love the exit at Bama. So now we're going to get in the mix with Georgia, and then so now we think we're going to Georgia, but oh shit, here comes Ryan Day and Ohio State. I'm pretty sure they flew down there the week of his commitment and kind of made like a last push of the chips in on that one. But I think it ultimately boiled down to, a lot of things that you're going to see at Ohio State that I don't know if Georgia would have placated to. Like, for example, he's going to play offense this year. I said that 3 months ago. It was part of the quote-unquote demands, right? We want to play safety. We want to play kick returner. We want to be the punt returner. And, oh, by the way, we want 8 to 10 offensive snaps a game. You know why? Because he clearly wants to win the Heisman. And by the way, I think he's good enough to do so up there at Ohio State. I think he's the best football player I've ever evaluated.
Yeah.
I mean, he comes from the state of Georgia, and he's not the biggest. He's not the fastest. But he's the only safety, the non-quarterback I've ever seen that just makes everybody around him so much drastically better because he's a football savant. I mean, he's one of the smarter football players I've ever been around. I know you started the question with what happened. I think Ohio State won out in the end because, they met the demands. I mean, you don't even have to get into financial demands before, you get into the on-field product demands that I thought were made.
Well, ETN, new face, new place.
How about that?
Yeah, come on now. So is he going to be
there?
Will he be a focal piece? Because I think of Georgia, I think of great running backs. Will he be part of a committee? And
see, I'm gonna call you Cuz that man is going to be something that Georgia hasn't had, in my opinion, since DeAndre Swift. I feel like Georgia has really missed this way. Schools like Tennessee have been great at. Tennessee runs the ball really, really well, but Tennessee runs the football explosively.
Yeah,
like they rip off. I mean, the Jalen Wright touchdown starts football games, 75-yard touchdown to the house, door, smack, right to start the football game.
I was there.
Georgia hasn't had it. I was too. Georgia hasn't had a ton of those since Swift left, and part of the problem there is like Dejon Edwards could turn a -2 into a +6. He was really, really good at that. Kendall Milton could see a hole and hit it and know that the safety would never even think about touching me because I'm 245 pounds. He's not going to try to tackle me, right? But the idea that, the safety just met me at 6 yards. I have a 6-yard gain now, but if I make this guy miss, I can take a 60. That's what Etienne's going to bring back to this Georgia offense, in my opinion. And you could see it in the spring game. It was like that immediately. As soon as he touched the ball, very different life about him, very different electricity about him with the football in his hands. And that shouldn't be news to anybody in the SEC. He did that at Florida.
When Billy gets fired, who's the next Florida? Is it DJ? Is he coming up quarterbacking?
I mean, you talking about head coach?
No. I'm talking about player that you
transfer.
That you take off.
I don't know if Georgia can afford DJ Lagway. But I'm sure they will. I'm sure the entire SEC will go pillage that village.
When Carson Beck is done playing for Georgia, what are the odds that he's the best quarterback in Georgia history?
All right, so 0.
Because it's one?
Yeah, his chances of winning 2 titles are gone, and that's what Georgia fans will tell you, right? That guy won twice. You didn't. We even got into this discussion in the Georgia fan, realm about Charlie Condon. Yeah. Charlie Condon was a high school walk-on. Charlie Condon became the best college baseball player maybe ever in a singular season. And when pitched, hey, who had the better walk-on story, Stetson Bennett or Charlie Condon? You know how many times I got rings thrown in my face? Rings, as if we do this to baseball players, but we certainly do it to football players. If you don't win rings, you don't get to win the GOAT discussion. I mean, even with the Nick Saban discussion about being the GOAT, you're going to have to run down 7 if you ever get that guy.
And
you have to win 8.
I think that's what, it's so easy to get caught up in that little window of 2 to 3 years. You got to realize, hey, man, it was the 80s before you were winning these championships,
Correct.
So how many can Kirby get? I think he's got a hell of a run at it, but you may be in a small window that you don't realize.
I do, but that's true. But I also think the college football playoff expanding just created the additional lottery tickets for this.
Right.
I mean, you could lose. It's 1-game samples, right, in the college football playoff. You can have a bad day and end your season and ultimately your title hopes. But the idea that Georgia, as long as Kirby Smart's there, is not going to be a top 11 ranked football team at the end of the regular season. No. That seems a little bit like far-fetched to me, does it not, gentlemen?
Rare air, man.
Right? So, I personally think as long as he's there, as long as he has great quarterback play as well, I think he'll be fine. Next year's I think it's the real test for what they've been doing the last 3 or 4 years in terms of development, why they've been winning national championships or competing for them at a really, really high rate. You got a bunch of football players leaving that roster this year. They could smatter their own, NFL draft record this year. So we'll see. That in terms of how long is this run, I think we'll get a real answer next year.
That's a good way of dodging the question. I'm going to nail you down, Brooks. How many more championships is Kirby winning at Georgia?
Is this why you guys' podcast downloads are so high? Y'all be pinning guests down. Let's see. He's got 2 now. He's been coaching for 9 years.
I'm saying how many more does he win?
Yeah, no. I'm doing the math in my head right now. I think he's got another 10-year run, and maybe he grabs 3 more.
Yeah.
So 5. 5 in 19 years. That's not bad.
Not bad.
Be a good run.
That's a good one.
That'd be a damn good run for any head football coach.
You got any Heisman players on that team? Maybe not this year, but that you're seeing here maybe next year or 2?
I really do think Carson could win one this year. I think he's got an opportunity to do so. He's got to hit his deep balls, though. I think that was the one missing thing last year. I think there was probably 400, 500 yards left on the field, and certainly 5 or 6 touchdowns left on the field. And the red zone accuracy just wasn't what it was, in between the 20s last year for Carson. And the efficiency offensively just wasn't there in the red zone. Tend to stall out. I think they were top 5 in almost every offensive statistical category, whether you're an advanced analytics guy, whether you're a standard analytics guy. They were a top 5 team, except for the red zone. They were like top 40. Last year, which, if there's areas of improvement, it's completing balls downfield and it's punching in the red zone. And maybe not always having to do it running the football. And I know Kirby gets caught up in that great teams run the ball in the red zone and they run it into the end zone and they score. And it's the safest way to play it. It's the best mathematical way to play it. But, if you're going to Heisman, you got to throw 40 touchdowns nowadays, and that's just the way it is.
Exactly. Well, you got enough marquee games to kind of have those Heisman moments.
Certainly, and that's the big thing, right? He's got to have balling run games in
Yeah.
those. If he throws for 320 or averages 320 in those 3 games, they go 2-1 and they're at 11-1 playing on Saturday in the SEC championship game. He's certainly in New York, and whether or not he wins it's kind of dependent upon the rest of the college football landscape. I think your guy has an opportunity to do it, though.
This show just got
Buttering him
longer.
up. Yeah.
That was my plan.
Does Georgia even have a rival right now with Nick Saban retiring? And again, I realize I'm not saying Florida. That is a rival. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that. That's great. But how many Georgia fans are scared of Florida? I would say virtually none.
Yeah.
Does Georgia have a rival in terms of on the field, and could that change, you think, by the end of the season?
You know, I think it's still Bama until you beat them. That's still a crimson jersey over there. You know what I mean? They still got it on you. Now, mentally, I don't know if that football team even applies that. You know, they're such robots when the game actually starts. I don't know if they emotionally quantify that type of stuff. But, you know, you're right. I think 2 things are required: fear and hatred to create a rivalry, right? You either have to fear your opponent to hate him enough, or just hate him because he stole something from you or took something from you in terms of an opportunity. And they ain't got none of those right now in the SEC. We might establish new ones, though. You know what I mean? I think for Georgia, while Florida's down, while Tech's still trying to climb back up, I think you have to look at teams like Tennessee and you have to look at teams like Alabama. And maybe Texas becomes that new threat, right? Maybe Texas becomes the version of what Alabama was all those years. I can't foresee the future. But yeah, I think you have to look across the bow in the conference nowadays, not the traditional divisions like we used to.
Do you think Alabama's especially dangerous, given the fact that virtually no one is picking them to win this league, to win the national championship? And if Kalen DeBoer is as good as his resume suggests, I mean, Alabama's got as good odds as anybody.
I think Alabama's dangerous because Kalen DeBoer went to a college football playoff while recruiting at a top 40 level. And he just walked into a roster with a top 5 level.
Right.
Yeah.
That dude's been beating the brake drums off of good football coaches with nothing.
Yeah.
And now you finna give him all the cupboards? Like, he's got everything. And, oh, by the way, that SOB is recruiting like nobody's business right now. And I think, you know, I got caught up into, this Washington dude, like, he don't recruit. Like, this is a recruiting conference. Well, but you got a 5-hour radius in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that is very unique to college football. You're 5 hours from Memphis. You're 5 hours from Atlanta. You're 5 hours from any part of southeastern Louisiana. Like, you might be able to get all the way, you know, into eastern Texas within 5 hours if you're careful and you do it right. Their 5-hour radius is so drastically large and so connected to the nation's best talents that it's going to be hard not to recruit well at that university, especially when you're on top of your shit. Like, we're going to see him tomorrow and listen to him, and I would imagine he's pretty damn buttoned up.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the other thing that speaks a lot about him is all of his guys travel with him. Them dudes been following that joker around forever. They were at Indiana. They followed him to Fresno. They went to Washington. Like, this coaching staff has done everything to remain with him. And I think that speaks, except for the OC. Yeah. I think that speaks a lot about, you know, what kind of person he is, even though I don't know nothing about him. Yeah, I can just see it based off the tea leaves in his career.
So who will be Georgia's toughest test this year?
Ooh.
Because there's some tough ones.
Is Ole Miss undefeated at the end of the year when they face off?
I think they could be.
Because if they're 10-2, I think Georgia doggy walks that one. I worry about when you create a roster based off of transfer portals. I worry what your team looks like when all hopes are gone. You know what I mean? Like, when you're front running and you got a bunch of people that just showed up, y'all gonna front run with the best of them. But when things get tough, when things get ugly, I wonder if these, you know, transfer portal based football teams fold like a cheap suit. You know what I mean? I wonder if that happens this year. But I think it's Alabama and Tuscaloosa or Texas right now on the forefront. Texas, you know, from a line of scrimmage standpoint, like, Texas is that.
All right, so that's a direct quote. I'm going to tag that. Georgia beats Ole Miss by 50. Go.
Got him. And that's a tape.
We got it.
Oh, no. Hey, last question I've got. Obviously, November 16th is near and dear to my heart. And given that Georgia's not too loud down there, do you think Tennessee has a shot against those Bulldogs?
Buddy, you better learn how to run into a 5-man box against Georgia, because that's the thing. Everyone gets so caught up in Tennessee's pass offense, right? The wide choice passing offense, all that good stuff. It ain't about that. They run the hell out the football at Tennessee, and if you can't stop it, you ain't going to beat them. And Georgia, the last 3 years, has said, okay, you like to run the football and force us to play light boxes, meaning we have less players in our box than you do. Well, guess what? We're the University of Georgia, and that's what we're predicated on. We're predicated on dedicating bodies to the pass and stopping you with our big humans. And Tennessee ain't been able to run the football apart from that one run. I think they averaged 2.1 yards per carry if you took out the Jalen Wright run last year. That's the whole problem. It ain't about the passing attack. They're going to get shots downfield. That's what everyone fails to kind of realize about Georgia is they are a little bit susceptible every once in a while to an explosive pass. I think over the years we've seen that. But if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to run the football. And they ain't been able to run the football against Georgia the last couple of years. Here's the difference. Nico's got some legs, and Joe did not. Hendon did, but it didn't really work out in that particular football game. And in the Hendon matchup,
it was raining.
And I feel like the last 3 years, y'all kind of gotten bull rushed to start the football game. I think a little shell shocked. And if you can avoid that, maybe. But nah, I don't think so.
And his cousin Shane likes to say Sanford Stadium, very quiet atmosphere.
Quiet.
It doesn't even compete, right?
No.
Well, I won't know this year. They put the press box behind plexiglass. So
What's Beck's phone number before you leave?
I mean, no comment.
All right, Brooks, really appreciate your time. Before you go, can you tell our audience how to follow you, how to find your work?
Yeah, you can check me out on all social medias at Brooks Austin BA. And the boys mentioned the YouTube show. It's the Film Guy Network. Search it out. We do live content every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday during the off season, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Talk all things college football for a good hour before we do the Homer stuff. Talk all dog. Appreciate y'all boys for real.
Thank you, man.
That was great.